Don't worry. Once he pays off the mortgage, I'm gone. That's what my fiancé texted his dad. I kept quiet, built a trap, and when he tried crying to my parents, my father destroyed his entire scheme in seconds. All right, Reddit. A couple months ago, I, Eddie 31 male, found out my fiancé 28 wasn't exactly planning a wedding, more like a payout. What started with one weird text on our shared tablet turned into the craziest few weeks of my life. Let's just say I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even confront him. I played along. And when the time was right, I made sure everyone saw who he really was. It was just a Tuesday. Nothing worth remembering. I was in my office at home going over blueprints for a new client. The house was quiet except for the faint noise of the TV where Andrew was curled up on the couch. Then the shared tablet buzzed on the counter. We hardly used that thing. It mostly just lived on the charger gathering dust. But something made me glance over. The message preview popped up on the iPad from his dad, and I didn't even have to unlock it. It read, "Any luck getting him to talk about the mortgage?" It was from his dad, Michael. I frowned. Mortgage? That didn't make sense. Andrew didn't own property. My house was mine. Paid for, deed in my name, long before he moved in. So, what mortgage were they talking about? Before I could even process it, another bubble appeared. Andrew had just replied, "Not yet. He's avoiding it. But don't worry, I'll get him to agree before the wedding. Once he pays it off, I'm gone." I just stared at it. You ever read something so blunt your brain refuses to process it? Like the words are in English, but they don't add up in your head. That's what it felt like. I read it once, twice, a third time. Same result. No typo, no joke, no misunderstanding. Andrew and his dad were plotting to get me to pay off his family's mortgage, and then he'd dump me. The first wave was pure anger. The kind of anger that makes your vision narrow. I wanted to smash the tablet, walk into the living room, and rip into him right there. The thought of him sitting 20 feet away laughing at some sitcom while planning to gut me financially made my blood boil. But then something else happened. It was like someone flipped a switch. My heart slowed down. My hands stopped shaking. And a cold kind of calm set in. I can't explain it except to say I've never been calmer in my life. Because here's the truth. You yell and scream when you're trying to fix something. But this wasn't worth fixing. This wasn't a fight. This was already dead. What was left now was demolition. And demolition is all about precision. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the lock screen. Sent it straight to my email. Then I locked the tablet and set it back on the counter like nothing happened. My face was steady. My voice was steady. Inside, though, every gear in my head was turning. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. Andrew glanced up from the couch. "Hey babe, you're quiet. Everything okay?" "Just thinking about a project," I said, casual as ever. My voice sounded normal even to me. He smiled and went back to his show, completely unaware that I'd just seen the one text that cracked his whole little world wide open. That night, I lay in bed next to him. He scrolled through Instagram, laughing at memes, leaning over occasionally to kiss my cheek like nothing had changed. And I played along, keeping my breathing steady, my face unreadable. But my brain was running blueprints of its own. I thought back to little things that hadn't made sense before. The way he'd bring up his parents' stress about their house like he wanted me to ask more. The comments about how a strong partnership means sharing everything. The jokes about how he really hit the jackpot with me. I'd shrugged those off. Now they weren't random. They were pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known I was solving. And that line in his text, "Once he pays it off, I'm gone." That told me everything I needed to know. There was no maybe, no hesitation. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment comment. It was a plan. Cold, straightforward. Andrew thought he was clever. Thought he was playing chess while I was busy decorating the board. But what he didn't realize was that I'd just seen the entire game laid out in one move. Every scheme, every trick, every endgame. And I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Confrontation would give him time to fake cry, spin a story, maybe even gaslight me into second-guessing myself. I wasn't giving him that chance. No. I was going to do this my way. Clean, precise, final. By the time I turned out the light, I knew this much. I wasn't his fiancé anymore. That role died the second I saw that message. From this point on, I was the problem he didn't see coming. He thought I was the guy paying off his family's mortgage. He had no idea I was about to foreclose on his entire plan. The next morning, I waited until Andrew left for his shift at the gallery. As soon as the door clicked shut, I pulled the tablet off the charger and opened his messages again. The iPad was still signed into his iMessage account. I hadn't touched it since we set it up, so everything was right there. This time, I didn't stop at the one text. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. It was like reading the script to a con movie where I was cast as the idiot Eddie. Months of back and forth between him and his dad. They didn't even try to be subtle. His dad sent, "He makes good money. He's stable. That's what you needed. Now it's time to secure the house." Andrew replied, "He doesn't like talking about mortgages. He keeps saying it's not his business." His dad, "Then make it his business. Play the future together card. If he resists, cry. Men hate when we cry." There were dozens of these coaching sessions, strategy planning. I could almost see them leaning over the phone, giggling like they were running Ocean's 11 out of a suburban living room. The worst part was Andrew's replies. He wasn't hesitating. He wasn't conflicted. He was in it 100%. He's so focused on the wedding right now, I barely have to try. He just nods and agrees. Sometimes I almost feel bad. He's actually a good guy. His dad, "Don't feel bad. Feel smart. This is about your future, not his." Then the one that made me sit back in my chair and laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetic. What about after he pays it off? Won't it look suspicious if I leave right away? His dad, "Stay for a year. Make it look normal, then say you're unhappy. By then, the mortgage is gone. You're free." A year. They were actually scheduling how long he'd fake being my husband before walking. I scrolled further. Andrew bragging about how much I covered already. He pays for everything. The house, the car insurance, the vacations. My paycheck is just for me. It's like having training wheels until I'm free. That one hit different because it was true. I'd carried the weight while he coasted, and he still thought he was the one winning. I started screenshotting every single damning line, sent them to my email, backed them up in a cloud folder, saved them to a flash drive for good measure. If he ever tried to spin this, I wanted enough receipts to bury him 6 feet under a mountain of his own words. By the time Andrew got home that evening, I had his entire scam archived in 3 different places. He walked in with a bag of takeout and kissed me like nothing had happened. "I got your favorite," he said, all cheerful. I smiled back. "Thanks." Inside, though, I was cataloging every fake smile, every casual touch. He thought he was running the con. He didn't realize that Eddie had already flipped the script. The next day, I called Frank, my lawyer. He's an old-school guy. No nonsense. The type who wears the same gray suit to every meeting and doesn't waste words. I explained the situation and showed him the screenshots. He scrolled through them slowly, eyebrows raised. Then he set the tablet down and looked me dead in the eye. "He has no legal claim to anything you own. The house is yours. The business is yours. The only vulnerability you have is if you voluntarily pay that mortgage. You cut a check, and it's gone. That's what they're aiming for." "So if I don't," I asked, "then he gets nothing." He walks away with whatever clothes are in your closet. But he leaned forward. "If you want to end this clean, you need to let him think he's still winning. If you confront him now, he'll just deny it and stall. Let him think he's close to cashing in. That's when you pull the rug out." That advice stuck with me. I'm an architect. I know about timing. You don't knock down a building mid-design. You wait until the scaffolding's up, the walls are in place, everything's standing tall. Then you place the charges at the exact weak points and bring it down in one clean collapse. I left his office more certain than ever. The plan wasn't to argue. The plan wasn't to scream. The plan was to make him think the heist was working until the moment I made sure every single person saw what he really was. That night, Andrew came home talking about some color scheme he wanted for the wedding invitations. I nodded, played along, even joked about fonts. He smiled, leaned on my shoulder, and scrolled through Pinterest like nothing in his world was wrong. He had no clue his blueprint was sitting on 3 separate drives. No clue I'd already walked his playbook to a lawyer. No clue that every step he took closer to the finish line was a step I was letting him take on purpose. By the time he fell asleep on the couch, I knew exactly how the next few weeks would play out. Andrew thought he was about to secure his family's future. What he didn't realize was that I was already laying the foundation for his downfall. The trick now was patience. I couldn't just blow up on him. That would hand him the advantage. He'd flip into fake tears, call me controlling, maybe even run to his parents crying about how I misunderstood. No, I needed him to think the plan was still alive. I needed him comfortable, overconfident. So, I started playing the part. A few days later, we were making dinner together. He was chopping vegetables. I was standing by the stove pretending to focus on the pan, and I sighed loud enough for him to notice. "What's wrong?" he asked, putting on that sweet, innocent tone he used when he wanted something. I shook my head, kept it casual. "Just been thinking a lot about your parents' mortgage. About us, about how it would feel to start married life with that kind of weight hanging over everything." I didn't even have to look at him to know his eyes lit up. He dropped the knife on the cutting board, grabbed my arm, and said, "You've been thinking about that?" His voice was dripping with fake hope, like he'd been rehearsing it.
"Yeah," I said.
"I don't want that following us into marriage.
"It doesn't seem right."
I want us to start clean, as a team." His eyes watered immediately. If I didn't already know he was a fraud, I might have believed it. He hugged me, burying his face in my chest like this was the moment he'd been dreaming of. "You're the most generous man I've ever met," he whispered.
Generous?
Right. That word sat in my head like a rotten fruit. He wasn't seeing generosity. He was seeing a payday. The second he stepped away, he grabbed his phone and darted into the hallway. I could hear his voice bouncing off the walls as he called his dad. "He's doing it. I told you he would. He said he doesn't want the mortgage hanging over us."
I knew it.
I stood there stirring the pan, biting back a laugh. The fish had taken the bait. But I wasn't done because handing over money in private would give him too much control. I wanted this exposed publicly where there was no room for spin, no misunderstanding excuses. I wanted both families to see the scam unravel in real time. So when he came back into the kitchen smiling through his crocodile tears, I added one more line. "But listen, if I do this, I don't just want to wire money into some account.
It's too important.
This should be official, something worth remembering."
He tilted his head. "What do you mean?"
"I want to do it in front of our families. Make it part of the wedding build-up.
A real moment.
A dinner where I can give you the check hand to hand. Symbolic, His smile stretched so wide I thought his face might crack. That's so romantic," he stammered. And then he hugged me again, tighter this time, like he was clinging to the jackpot he thought he'd just secured. Romantic. If only he knew the only paper I'd be handing over wasn't a check, but his own words in black and white. That night, he spent an hour on the phone with his dad, pacing the hallway giggling. He wants to make it official. It's even better than we thought. I sat in the living room quietly making notes of every word. Over the next week, I set the stage. First, I called Frank again. "He thinks I'm paying the mortgage," I told him.
"Good," he said.
The deeper he believes it, the harder the fall. Then, I booked a private room at one of the nicest restaurants in town. The kind of place where the staff remembers your name and the chairs feel heavier than most people's couches.
Andrew thought it was his idea, of course. A family dinner.
That's perfect. They'll all see what a man you are. Yeah, they'd see.
All right.
While he was giddy planning outfits and talking about how his parents would finally feel safe, I was quietly arranging movers to box up his belongings the same night as the dinner. Frank had already confirmed he wasn't on the lease or the deed, so I was fully within my rights to have his things packed. The movers documented everything, photographed each box, and delivered it straight to his parents' address. Every shoe, every sweater, every bit of junk he'd scattered through my house would be sitting on his old doorstep before dessert was finished. I also changed the access codes on my home security system. His fingerprint login on the smart lock, gone. Garage remote deactivated. By the time the dinner was over, he'd be locked out permanently. He had no idea. He thought he was closing in on victory. He started being extra affectionate. Cooking dinners he normally never bothered with, laughing at my jokes a little too hard. The whole, "I'm the perfect fiancé" act. It would have been insulting if it wasn't so transparent, but I let him play his role. I nodded at the right times, held his hand, kissed his forehead. Meanwhile, I was sharpening the knife. The night before the dinner, he sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through outfits on his phone. "I can't decide what to wear tomorrow," he said. "It's such a big night."
"Go with the blue one," I told him.
"You look amazing in it."
He beamed.
"You're so sweet." I smiled back.
Sweet?
Not really.
Strategic?
Absolutely. Because tomorrow night in that perfect blue outfit, he was going to get everything he asked for, just not the way he expected. And the best part, he'd be the one handing me the stage. The night of the dinner, I walked into the restaurant like I was walking into a meeting I'd already won. Private room, round table, dim lighting, white tablecloths. Andrew was buzzing with excitement, practically glowing. His dad, Michael, wore that smug smile like he'd just orchestrated a Wall Street merger. His father, Russell, looked happy but confused, like he always did. My parents, Robert and David, were just proud, chatting about the wedding. Everyone thought this was going to be a big family unity night.
They weren't wrong.
It was unity, just not the kind Andrew had in mind. After the appetizers, Andrew squeezed my hand. "I still can't believe you're doing this," he whispered, his voice trembling like I was about to hand him the keys to the world. "You deserve it," I said smoothly. And I meant it, just not the way he thought. He deserved what was coming. Once the main course was cleared, I stood up, glass in hand. The room quieted, all eyes on me. "First of all, thank you everyone for being here tonight," I began, calm, steady voice like I'd rehearsed it 100 times. "We're here to celebrate a new chapter, and I wanted to do something special for Andrew. So, I put together a little slideshow for him, just a way to remember our journey together." Andrew covered his mouth with his hands, eyes wide. His dad leaned over and whispered something to him, grinning. My dad, Robert, smiled at me, touched by the gesture. The waiter dimmed the lights, and the TV in the private room flickered to life. Soft piano music played as the first pictures appeared. Me and Andrew at the beach, laughing. A selfie from our trip to Chicago. A shot of him showing off the ring. All smiles, all memories. Andrew's face lit up.
"Oh my God," he whispered.
His dad dabbed at his eyes like he was watching the climax of a romantic movie. I let it run for about 2 minutes. Happy couple, happy memories, the perfect setup. Then, just when everyone was relaxed, the screen faded to black. The music cut out, and in giant glowing font with a date and timestamp, "Not yet." He's avoiding it. But don't worry, I'll get him to agree before the wedding. Once he pays it off, I'm gone. The room went dead silent. You could hear forks being set down. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Andrew's smile froze. Michael's face drained of color. My dad leaned forward, squinting at the screen. The next slide appeared. His dad's coaching, "Don't be aggressive. Make it about your future. Cry if you have to.
He'll cave."
Then Andrew's reply, "He's so distracted with the wedding."
Perfect timing.
The words sat on the screen long enough for everyone to read.
Then the next slide. Then the next.
Slowly, one by one, every ugly piece of their plan filled the room. The stay-for-a-year plan, the bragging about how I paid for everything, the smug messages about how easy it was to manipulate me. Each slide hit harder than the last. Russell's face went from confusion to horror as the reality sank in. My dad, David, covered his mouth, whispering, "Oh my God," under his breath. My father, Robert, sat stone-faced, eyes fixed on the screen like he was reading a contract he'd already decided to rip apart.
Andrew panicked. "Eddie, turn it off. This isn't fair.
This is private." He half stood, reaching toward the remote, but I calmly held it out of reach. "No," I said, my voice level. "This is the truth." Michael tried to jump in. "This is out of context." The next slide cut him off, his own words in big letters, "Don't feel bad.
Feel smart.
This is about your future, not his." He sank back in his chair, speechless. The final slide faded in. The one that started it all, "Once he pays it off, I'm gone."
The screen went black.
The lights came back up. Every eye in the room was on Andrew. He sat frozen, face pale, sweat beading. I set my glass down and looked around the table. "This wasn't a wedding," I said.
Calm, measured. It was a con. A very well-planned one.
"I'll give them that, but not well enough." Andrew broke down, sobbing.
"No, it's not what it looks like. I can explain." I cut him off.
"You already explained in your own words." Slide after slide. Russell turned to Michael, his face dark. "Michael, what did you do?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I turned to my parents. "I'm sorry you had to see this, but I needed you to know. Andrew and his dad weren't planning a marriage. They were planning a payout." Then I faced Andrew directly. "The engagement is over.
We are over.
The only thing you're taking home tonight is the slideshow in your head." I signaled to the waiter. The screen was rolled back up, the lights fully restored. My parents and I stood. Andrew reached out, sobbing.
"Eddie, please.
You can't do this."
I stepped back.
"No, Andrew. You can't do this. You tried to use me as your family's personal bank. You thought you found someone too kind, too blind, too soft to notice.
You were wrong.
With that, I nodded to my parents.
Let's go.
We walked out, leaving Andrew collapsed in his chair, Michael staring at the table, Russell with his head in his hands. The last thing I heard as the door shut was Andrew's voice breaking. He ruined everything.
And he was right. I had, just not in the way he thought.
The fallout started before I even got home from the restaurant. My phone buzzed non-stop the whole drive. Missed calls, texts, voicemails stacking up.
The first few were crying. Eddie, please.
It was a misunderstanding. You don't know the full story. By the fifth voicemail, he'd shifted into anger. How could you humiliate me in front of everyone? Do you know what you've done?
I didn't respond.
I didn't even listen past the first 10 seconds of each message. By the time I got home, movers had already cleared his things. Every box was on its way to his parents' front door. His closet, his art supplies, his junk, gone. The locks on the house were rekeyed while we were at dinner that night, and I'd already deleted his access codes from the garage and alarm system. He had no idea yet. But when he tried to come back later, he'd find nothing waiting for him. By the next morning, my inbox looked like it had been spammed by a scammer. He'd sent 30 emails overnight. Some begging, some threatening, some blaming me for ruining his future.
It was funny in a way.
This guy thought he was entitled to my money. And when the ATM shut down, his entire personality collapsed. Around noon that day, I was in my office sketching revisions for a client when the receptionist, Ryan, buzzed my line. Eddie, there's a situation in the lobby." I walked out, and there he was, Andrew. Sweat-smudged face, hair a mess, pacing back and forth in front of the desk like he owned the building. The second he saw me, he stormed over. "You can't do this to me," he yelled, loud enough for half the office to hear. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You owe me a chance to explain." I held up a hand, calm, controlled. "Andrew, this is my workplace. You're making a scene. You think you're so smart, don't you?" He snapped, parading those texts like they mean something.
It was my dad. He pushed me into it.
"You know I love you." Behind him, two of my project managers peeked around a doorway, wide-eyed. Ryan was frozen, not sure whether to call security. I kept my voice steady. "Andrew, what you did is written in your own words with timestamps. That wasn't your dad typing for you. That was you. So no, you don't get to blame this on anyone else." He balled his fists, voice cracking. "You're throwing away everything we built."
I couldn't help myself. I smirked.
"We didn't build anything.
I built.
You just moved in and decorated." His face twisted, and for a second, I thought he might actually swing at me. Instead, he burst into tears again and dropped into one of the lobby chairs.
"You don't understand.
My parents are furious. My dad barely speaks to me. I have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a you problem," I said flatly. "And just so we're clear, you can't be here. If you don't leave now, I'll have security escort you out. And if you come back, I'll file for a restraining order." That got his attention. He stood up, glaring at me through the tears. "You'll regret this, Eddie. You think you're so perfect, but you're going to end up alone. Nobody will ever love you like I did." I looked him dead in the eye.
"Good."
He stormed out, slamming the glass doors so hard Ryan jumped. I turned back to the desk. "Remember what we talked about? If he ever shows up again, page security first." This time, I waved them off. Word about the meltdown spread through the office by the end of the day. My staff tried to play it cool, but I caught the smirks. Honestly, I didn't mind. Better they see me handle it calmly than hear rumors. That night, more messages. This time, he'd switched strategies. "Eddie, please. We can work through this. My dad is the one who wanted the mortgage thing, not me." I don't know. I was confused. Then 5 minutes later, "If you don't call me back, I'm going to your parents' house. They love me. They'll make you listen." That one actually made me laugh. He thought my parents, the same parents who sat there in silence while his text messages scrolled across a big screen, were going to side with him. He really was delusional. I called my father, Robert, and gave him the heads up. He was quiet for a second, then said, "Let him come." His voice was calm, almost casual, but I knew that tone. It meant he was ready. And Andrew had no idea what he was walking into. I blocked his number right after that. No more voicemails, no more spam emails. If he wanted to try his luck with my parents, I wasn't going to stop him. He thought he was about to play the same tricks on them that he tried on me. But my father had been tearing down weak blueprints for 40 years. He was about to run headfirst into a wall he couldn't budge.
And me, I was done.
He wasn't my fiancé anymore. He wasn't even my problem. He was just a loud distraction circling the drain. So when he left that voicemail about going to my parents' house, I didn't just warn them. I made sure I was there. Saturday afternoon, I pulled into the driveway half an hour early. My dad, David, was anxious about the whole thing, pacing the kitchen. My father, Robert, was in his study, calm as ever, sipping coffee and flipping through blueprints like it was just another day.
That's how he is.
He doesn't waste energy. He saves it for when it matters. The bell rang right on time. David opened the door, and there stood Andrew. Red eyes, fake tears, shaking voice. He looked like he'd practiced in the mirror on the way over. "I'm so sorry to come like this," he said, almost sobbing. "But Eddie won't talk to me. He's throwing everything away over a misunderstanding. Please, I just need you to hear me out." I stepped out from the hallway, arms crossed.
Misunderstanding?
"You typed it, once he pays off the mortgage, I'm gone." "That wasn't a typo." He jumped like he didn't expect me there.
Eddie, please.
"It wasn't me. It was my dad. He pressured me into it. I didn't mean any of it. You know I love you." Robert joined us in the entryway, tall and steady, hands in his pockets. His voice was calm, but had that edge to it. "No, Andrew. Love doesn't come with a price tag and a mortgage attached. What you wrote wasn't love. It was a plan."
His voice cracked.
I was scared. Robert cut him off. "Scared people don't draft blueprints for cons. You plotted this out. You and your dad traded instructions like it was a business deal. My son wasn't your fiancé. He was your target." The silence was thick. Andrew's face twisted between anger and panic. Then, like clockwork, another knock hit the door. David muttered, "Oh, perfect," and opened it. Andrew's parents walked in. Russell in front, trying to look calm but sweating already. Michael behind him with that fake concerned expression plastered on his face.
Russell started first.
"We're so sorry to barge in like this. Our son is devastated. And I think Eddie may have overreacted. It's all a misunderstanding." Robert's laugh was sharp.
Overreacted?
"Russell, I watched your son's texts projected on a 10-foot screen. He wasn't talking about love. He was talking about timelines and payouts. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud." Michael stepped forward quickly.
It wasn't fraud.
He was overwhelmed with the idea of starting a marriage while his parents were under so much stress. I gave him bad advice, yes, but it was out of love for him. "Stop," I said flatly, cutting him off.
Don't even try it.
Your texts were on the screen too.
Don't feel bad. Feel smart. That wasn't advice.
That was coaching. Michael's face went red, but he didn't say anything. Russell puffed up, trying to regain control.
Now, wait a minute.
Robert leaned forward slightly, voice dropping. "No, you wait, because I've already spoken to my son's lawyer. Do you know what they call it when multiple people coordinate a plan to obtain money under false pretenses? Conspiracy to commit fraud. And you know how investigators work? They dig into everything. Bank records, phone logs, transfers. They put every inch of your finances under a microscope."
Russell froze. His face drained.
He tried to swallow, but nothing came out. Robert didn't stop. "So you tell me, Russell, how confident are you in your family's records? How clean do you think they'll look when someone starts pulling bank statements and phone records?" Russell's bravado cracked instantly. He stammered, that won't be necessary." Robert stepped back, calm as ever. "It's already necessary. You brought this into our home. You thought my son was just some generous fool you could bleed dry. But you forgot who raised him." Andrew turned to me, desperate now.
Eddie, don't listen to this.
I was confused. "I didn't mean it like that. We can work through this." I smirked, arms still crossed. "Work through it, Andrew? You weren't confused. You were greedy. You wanted me to pay off your parents' house. You weren't building a life with me. You were running a heist with your dad as your partner, and I don't date criminals." His sobbing turned ugly. Loud gasps that echoed through the room. Robert's voice cut through one final time. "You came here looking for sympathy. You won't find it. The engagement is over. The relationship is over. If you or your parents try to contact Eddie again, we'll pursue a restraining order. That's your reality now." David folded his arms, his voice cold. "Leave, all of you now." And just like that, it was over. They shuffled out, humiliated, muttering to each other before they even hit the driveway. I could hear Russell snapping at Michael. Michael blaming him back. Andrew sobbing like his world had collapsed.
The door closed. Silence.
Robert turned to me.
Calm, steady.
"The site is clear."
I nodded. Demolition complete.
And that was exactly what it was. Clean, precise, nothing left standing. The fallout didn't take long. By Sunday afternoon, word was already circling through Andrew's extended family. One of my friends who worked at the same gallery, he texted me. "Dude, he came in today like a hurricane, crying, screaming, saying you ruined his life." Apparently, he'd tried to convince his boss to give him an advance on his paycheck because he had nowhere to live. Spoiler, they said no. His stuff was sitting in boxes at his parents' doorstep, just like I arranged. And here's where things got good. Russell, his father, refused to bring it inside. He told him straight up he was done funding his drama. Andrew was stuck standing in his parents' driveway, screaming at both of them while half the neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. By Monday, I got the update from David. "They're eating each other alive," he said. Russell's blaming Michael for everything. Michael screaming back at him, and Andrew keeps trying to spin it like you framed him. Nobody's buying it. Good. That's exactly how I wanted it. What hit harder was when Russell finally cut him off.
He wasn't stupid.
He knew if investigators ever actually dug into their finances, he'd be the one holding the bag. So, his solution was simple. Burn the bridge. He told Andrew he was on his own. No car payments, no credit cards, no bailout money. That's when the messages started. Not to me. I had him blocked everywhere. He tried going through friends. One of my buddies forwarded me a message he sent. "Can you tell Eddie I'll do anything if he forgives me? I'll pay him back someday. Please." I just laughed. Pay me back with what? He barely scraped by at a part-time gallery job. He couldn't even cover his own bills without me. Meanwhile, my life, peaceful. I'd wake up in my own house, clean and quiet. No fake tears, no drama, no passive-aggressive comments about being a team. Just me, my work, and silence. The silence was worth more than any apology he could ever spit out. As for Andrew, he spiraled fast. Within weeks, he was couch-hopping between friends who quickly got tired of his crying and blaming me for everything. Then, he tried moving back in with his parents, but Russell wasn't having it. From what I heard, he threw his boxes into the garage and told him to figure his own life out. Michael wasn't much better off. Russell turned all his anger on him. The marriage that already had cracks completely caved. David said he heard them arguing in the driveway once. Russell shouting, "You turned our son into a thief." While Michael screamed back, "You were supposed to cover me." It was a circus. And Andrew was at the center of it. I didn't have to lift a finger. They destroyed themselves. One night, I was sitting on my back porch when my phone buzzed from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Andrew's voice came through, broken and shaky. "Eddie, please. You don't understand what you've done. My dad won't talk to me. My father blames me for everything. I have nothing. I need you." I let him talk for a minute, his words tumbling out in a desperate mess. Then I cut him off. "Andrew, you gambled everything on me being stupid. You lost. That's not my problem." And I hung up. Blocked the number. Done. The next morning, I sat in my office with a coffee, sketching designs for a new client. My assistant, Nathan, walked in with a grin. "You look lighter these days," he said. "Because I am," I replied. And I was. No more dead weight, no more leeches, just me and my work, moving forward without a parasite dragging behind. As for Andrew, last I heard he was working double shifts at the gallery, barely making rent on some rundown apartment across town. No fiancé, no financial backup, no family stability, the same mortgage he thought I'd pay still sitting there hanging over his parents' heads. He didn't just lose me. He lost everything. His plan, his family's trust, his financial lifeline, all because he thought he could play games with someone who was already 3 steps ahead. He thought he was the one running a perfect plan, but the truth, he handed me every piece of evidence I needed to burn his whole scheme down. And now he gets to live with it every single day. The demolition wasn't just complete. It left nothing standing. And the ground is mine to build something real on.